So welcome to Chapter 5 of Selling and Sales Management, St. Francis University. My name is Adam Conrad, your instructor. Chapter 5, we're going to be talking about communication styles, the key to adaptive selling. A couple of the learning objectives for this chapter involve discussing how a communication style influences the relationship process in sales, the two major dimensions of the communication style model, the 4 communication styles in the communication style model, and we'll learn how to identify your preferred communication style and that of your customer, and learn to achieve interpersonal versatility and build strong selling relationships with style flexing. So, the impressions that of others are developed by observing others' behavior. So there's an example here in the slide, talks about Jeff Bezos and CEO of Amazon and the Microsoft's Bill Gates, and obviously very different styles. Bezos is often described as happy and an extrovert. Bill Gates is often described as quiet and reflective. So let's face it, if you're going to be selling to different types of personality types, you're going to absolutely need to identify the best ways to approach people who have these different types of styles of leadership and different types of interpersonal behavior that they have. The communication style is going to be an important piece of this. So the relationship process that you have in sales is absolutely going to be driven by your communication style. So which is defined as the pattern of behavior that others observe. So you're going to watch other people in meetings. They're going to watch your behavior. You're going to be watching the people that you're working to try to sell products or services to, and look at their communication style. And obviously, it's going to be very important for you to be able to adapt to the different types of styles of folks that are out there. Adaptive selling is defined as altering your behavior in order to improve your communication with your customer. Communication style is an important element of adaptive selling. So let's face it, you're going to have to adapt to the different types and styles of selling. And that's going to be regional as well as interpersonal. So you may find, if you're working in New York City, that your behavior style is going to be quite a bit different than if you're working in Omaha, Nebraska. So you're going to have to adapt to the different styles of the people that you're around. And that's not to say that you won't find people who behave in Omaha the way somebody might behave in New York City, but their behavior tends to regionalize, and you'll find yourself in a position where you'll need to be able to adapt your selling style. So there is a communication style basis. So when we interact with someone whose style is different than our own, we have our own bias. We have our own style that we've developed. And there is a bias out there. So it develops when we've contacted another person whose communication style is different than our own. But as salespeople, we have to learn to manage our selling relationships and manage our bias so that we can adapt to the communication style of the folks that we're working with. So it's very important, and we want to make sure we don't disrupt our relationships with our customers because we have differing styles and different bias. There are books on this topic. The Versatile Salesperson by Roger Wenschlag is an example because you need to be able to adapt your communication style to that of your client to be most successful. There are 4 styles of the communication style model, 4 styles based on 2 different dimensions. The first dimension is dominance, which is the tendency of people to control or prevail over others. And so this first step is you need to really determine which is your preferred communication style and which is that of your client. The dominance continuum basically analyzes, you can use a questionnaire and analyze where you fall in the continuum between low and high dominance. Someone in low dominance may be reserved, unassertive, easygoing, and somebody with high dominance will be very decisive, very opinionated, self-assertive, and very vocal. And so the text has actually given us a tool in Table 5.1 to give us a dominance indicator so that you can identify, in filling out this chart, where you fall on this continuum. So obviously to the far right, you're more dominant, and to the far left, you're less dominant in terms of your own interaction in your own communication. No place is right or wrong. It's just important to know where you fall on the dominance indicator. and obviously where your clients fall as well. The second dimension is the sociability continuum. This reflects the amount of control that we exert on others. So sociability is a universal behavior characteristic that refers to the tendency of a person to seek and enjoy interaction with other people. High sociability is an indication of a person's preference to interact with other people, and lower sociability is going to be an indicator of people who want to work in an environment where you have more time alone, so you're more solitary. And so again, we have a continuum there. Notice the charts run, the first chart ran east-west, and this one's running north-south. And there's also another grid that you can fill out to determine how sociable you are. Obviously, if your check marks are going mainly to the right, you're more sociable, and you prefer to be around others more so than more check marks to the left, which are showing that you're lower in sociability. Again, not necessarily. This is not necessarily going to be accurate for each person. And by the way, it's not necessarily how other people observe you or essentially perceive you in terms of your sociability. You may think you're very social and very outgoing, and other people may refer to you as reserved and not very outgoing. So you may want to ask others where you fall on the scale. Maybe ask roommates or ask people you work with or ask friends and family. Be very honest. How do you find me on this sociability indicator? One thing with all of this that's very interesting to me is the different types and skills of people and how they equate to different types of selling. Being in the real estate business, I can tell you that it's a lot of people think real estate business is selling. And in fact, I've always referred to the real estate business as being mostly project management. And a lot of people don't see it that way. But I've taught project management for years, and I can tell you that real estate is really getting somebody from contract to closing. There's not a lot of sales, pure sales like we're talking about in this course in real estate. But real estate people are often called real estate salespeople. And my own perspective is that some people that are very hard charging, that have a high sociability, that have are very much vocal and very much or could be very vocal. A lot of those folks are not necessarily the best real estate salespeople because, in my opinion, real estate really needs to involve a lot of listening skills. So when you put these all together, high sociability, low dominance, and high dominance, you basically have a continuum. So what it gives you is the ability to take these scales and essentially break them up into quadrants. So obviously, if you're high sociability and high dominance, you're going to fit into a scale, which is essentially the emotive scale. So this is where you appear quite active, you take the social initiative, you encourage informality, you express emotional opinions. This type of person wants to create a social relationship quickly and usually feels comfortable on a first-name basis. People have an emotive style, tend to maintain and enjoy a large number of personal relationships. And there are some key words for folks that have this type of emotive style. And you'll see these. Very outgoing folks: sociable, emotional, personable, spontaneous, unstructured, persuasive, zestful. I don't hear people use that word a lot, but excitable, dynamic, stimulating. These are some of the key words. And you can think of people that you know that happen to exhibit this particular type or style. The directive style, again, more on the right-hand side here, right lower quadrant, is a person who has a directive style, likes to maintain control. Some people describe that have this type of directive style. They may not give the impression of listening. They tend to display a serious attitude. And you can think of examples in your own life, but good examples are Hillary Clinton, for example, and the late John McCain, where folks are aggressive, serious, opinionated, they're intense, they may be impatient, demanding, frank, bold, and pushy are all words that describe folks with a directive style. Again, you may know somebody, you can think of people that exhibit this particular style. Which moves us on to the lower left-hand quadrant, which is the reflective style. A reflective style is somebody that's low on dominance and low on sociability. These folks tend to examine facts, before making a decision, and they're very specific about getting details. They like orderliness. They control their emotional expressions. They might seem like they're people who are difficult to know. And there are some keywords for folks that have a reflective style, and they may be precise, aloof, serious, deliberate, scientific, industrious, questioning, preoccupied, stuffy, or disciplined. And interestingly, I think some of the folks in this quadrant, the more you get to know them, the more they kind of invite you into their inner circle. So again, you can think of some folks that you might know that exhibit this type of behavior. The supportive style is the last quadrant, and so folks in the upper left-hand quadrant are going to have someone who's low in dominance but high in sociability. They usually do not express themselves in a forceful manner, and they tend to be very good listeners. They like to complete their tasks in a quiet, unassuming manner. So they have the appearance of being quiet. They're going to listen to others. They tend to avoid the use of power, and they're going to make their decisions in a thoughtful and deliberate manner. Again, some real estate folks are very successful with this particular type of style because they listen, and that's a very important characteristic to have. Good examples, Ben Carson. So lightheaded, docile, relaxed, reserved, patient, compliant, passive, sensitive, soft-hearted, and warm are typical keywords that you associate with someone with a supportive style. So let's talk about minimizing some of the bias in communication. Communication style bias is a barrier to success in selling. So as salespeople, we deal with people in all four of the quadrants. Your versatility is basically your ability to minimize that communication style bias. Referring earlier to the text by Roger Wenschlag of the versatile salesperson, he describes versatility as the degree to which a salesperson is perceived as developing and maintaining buyer comfort throughout the sales process. So style flexibility is something that you can learn. Matter of fact, all of sales is something that you can learn. I mean, you hear all the time that people are born salespeople. I think they certainly are raised or have culturally adapted to certain types of communication style models, like you see here, certain personality profiles. But clearly, if they're self-aware, I think folks can adapt very well to managing things like communication style bias. So when you have the completed communication style model in each of these, it gives you insights into what you need to do to manage the relationship process in selling. Styles can be exaggerated, and when that happens, what could otherwise be a strength may be identified as a weakness instead. For instance, a detail-oriented person could become too detail-oriented, resulting in missing the big picture or becoming too obsessive. In zone 1, people are usually displaying their unique style with less intensity. In zone 2, the intensity of the style is greater. In the excess zone, the style is intense and rigid and may be perceived as a weakness. So the further you get into that outside, area, stronger and stronger, could be perceived as a weakness. So it's important for you to be able to understand and identify with the communication styles of folks and how they fit in with your style when it comes to working with them. So when you want to build strong relationships, and this is the fifth and final learning objective in this chapter, it's to learn to adapt your interpersonal versatility and build strong selling relationships with style flexing. In a selling situation, you should try to determine the customer's most preferred style and flex your own style accordingly. For example, if your own communication style is directive and your customer is supportive, you want to try to be more personal and warmer with that person and with your presentation. Once you know your customer's style, flexing your style can strengthen the relationship and make the difference between a presentation that falters and one that exceeds expectations. So it's, again, real important to determine what their style is, what your style is, and see how you need to adapt. The platinum rule is at the heart of flexing the sales strategy. You do unto others as they want done unto them. So again, the golden rule, or that's called the platinum rule in this case, it's basically taking the time to determine whether the customer is behaving as emotive, directive, reflective, or supportive, so that you can determine that which way you need to treat them and which way they would like to be treated. So in review of this chapter, we've discussed how communication style influences the relationship process in sales. We've identified the two major dimensions of the communication style model and explained the 4 communication styles in the communication style model. We've also discussed how to identify your preferred communication style and that of your customer using those grids, and how to achieve interpersonal versatility and build strong selling relationships with style flexing. So these are all very important topics. Again, sometimes what people refer to as mirroring, where you're mirroring and really reflecting the same style as your client, really making sure they feel comfortable with your style. Obviously, if they have a very reserved style and you're coming on very strong, that may not mix well with your client. So this chapter is really about you adapting and being versatile with your own style to match that of your client. And that's the end of chapter 5.